Hey everybody, I really do hope you love listening to The Megan James Show. Did you know that you can actually get paid just for listening to this podcast? I know it sounds insane, but it's true. We just discovered this free new app called Podcoin, and it literally pays you to listen to podcasts. So here's how it works. You listen to podcast and you earn Podcoin while you listen. Then you turn that Podcoin in for gift cards at places like Amazon or Starbucks. Or if you're a good, generous person, you can even donate that Podcoin to charity. The more you listen, the more you earn. So here's what you do. Download the app right now on iPhone or Android, and I have a special code for you. Simply use our code, Megan James, and you'll get 300 Podcoin just for signing up. And if you listen to enough of us on here, then you can get a cappuccino at Starbucks or an Amazon gift card on us. So go ahead and go listen to this podcast or virtually any podcast on Podcoin and sign up with the code Megan James. I swear it'll change the way you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening, guys. And here's our show. Hey guys, so in this interview, I had the opportunity to sit down with 3 of the 4 owners of the Kernersville Brewing Company. They've been around since 2015 and their first beer came out in March of 2016. But they already have over 3,400 followers on Facebook. So it may seem like they've amassed a sort of overnight following and success, but they actually have had more time in the game than many people realize. They have over 2 decades of brewing experience between them, and they were kind enough to indulge me by answering all of my questions without any complaints. We discussed the construction of the brewery, the tap room, the funding of the business, marketing the business, maintaining a work-life balance, and so much more. Guys, I am so excited to bring this content and this information to you today. I cannot wait to see your reaction. I would give you a background, but they do that for me at the beginning of the episode. So I'm not going to take up any more of your time, but just make sure you got a notepad handy, that you're able to take notes, and just give it your full attention, guys. I'm so excited. Without further ado, here's our show. What's up, guys? This is Megan James coming at you live from the Megan James Show. I'm here with a few guests. We're here with Rick, Dwight, and Eric. We are actually sitting in the Kernersville Brewing Company. I don't know how many of you guys have heard of this. I know we got some world-renowned people on here, but this is one of the best bars I've ever been to. And for those of you who don't know, I've worked in the bar scene for probably a decade. These people have really got it figured out, and they have such a unique background that I had to share it with you guys today. So let me just describe where we're sitting. I'm looking around at handcrafted wood bar finishes. I'm looking around at bar stools, this rustic iron and wood mix. There are beautiful murals on the wall. Their tap lines would make any bar manager jealous, guys. A phenomenal place, a phenomenal atmosphere, and when you're here and it's full, you can feel the energy, feel the vibes, and it's something unlike anything I've ever felt. So I kind of want to talk to them today to figure out how they've managed to master this. And with that, I'll go ahead and start in on this interview. So a lot of people that are on this podcast talk to us about more self-development, business development, that kind of thing. So many of them don't know about the brewing process. Would you guys be able to give us some insight on how that works, the actual brewing process?
Well, one thing that I've always said is that what you're selling is not necessarily the product. You're selling an experience. So you want to make an experience that people want to come back and do it again, and they want to bring their friends with them the next time. And that's been a motto that I've passed on to my partners and our employees, and they really carried through with it.
That's so true. And I noticed the first time we ever came in here, that was the first thing I noticed is how welcoming the environment was and how I definitely wanted to come back. We've been back several times, but it was just that feeling of like you've left home, but it doesn't quite feel that way. It feels like there's more comfort here, and I really like it. So, you've built a successful brewery, and I talked to Rick personally, and you mentioned that you didn't work in a bar before this.
Yeah, so none of us had Right. So none of us had never really worked in the bar. I think Eric might have had a little bit of bar backing experience in college.
He just
enough.
held up his fingers to
Yeah.
show a little bit.
So we didn't know what we didn't know.
Okay.
And part of that learning curve was just going different places, seeing what we liked, kind of picking and choosing, borrowing those ideas, and trying to incorporate them into this space and into our brewery as well. So we've had a lot of folks in this area who brew who have really just been gracious and willing to help us out. Couldn't have got here without that help.
That's awesome.
And the other thing that we got very, very lucky on was we had hired Vinny D'Abbraccio,
Okay.
who Vinny's our taproom manager.
He's our taproom manager and marketing coordinator.
Yeah, and so Vinny has a lot of restaurant experience, a lot of bar experience, and that was a huge thing for us to have Vinny come on board and hire him full time. He had actually worked for us, more of an intern for almost a year.
About a year, unpaid intern.
Unpaid intern,
Wow.
yeah.
Whatever we needed, he was
That's
there
awesome.
when we needed it.
And we were very, like, to Rick's point, which is a very valid point. We went to a lot of different breweries and a lot of different places, Dwight, myself, Rick, and we thought of things that we wanted and we didn't want. And of course, this place isn't perfect. It's not everything that
It's still under development.
Right. So, but we tried not to copy anyone, but we just knew what we wanted to do, and the people that worked on the bar and every bit of the people that worked in here is just it's a lot of craftsmanship.
Yeah, and it's evident. I mean, from everything from the bar itself to the, just the intricate details that you can tell the work you've put in, and it just, everything flows. It's not like you haven't got some random thing in the corner. It's a continuous thing that you've worked really hard to establish, and it's phenomenal. So can you talk to us about how we get what's in the brew to the tap, to the person? How does that work?
Yeah, so I think the best way to start with that is just at the very beginning of the brew process, which really starts with logistics.
Okay.
What grain you're going to get, where you're going to get it from, and that's all dependent on what type of beer that you're wanting to brew. And so logistics, you don't think about it in the brewing process, but it's a big part of it. And the other part, probably as big as anything, is cleaning.
Yeah.
Having a clean brewery, making sure you're following all your CIP rules and things like that.
Yep.
Are a huge part of the brewing process. And then you can kind of start peeling back the onion on what it takes to brew a beer.
Yeah.
Right. So, and like Rick said, good sanitation is key. You got to have the ingredients on hand, not just the grain, but the particular hops that you need for each beer, and then coming up with a brewing plan. How often we're going to brew this beer? How long is it going to take from the day we brew it to the day you can drink it? How quickly can we get it in the tap room?
Yeah. That's a lot of learning too.
Yeah, and one thing that I think we've been pretty fortunate on is that Kernersville Brewing Company, a lot of people don't realize this, we've been around since 2015. So we've brewed beer for that longer period of time. I think our actually first beer came out in March of 2016.
Right.
And for all of us, it was a huge advantage because, we have all our recipes. We've been doing this for several years. Everything is where it needs to be. We're going to have to make some adjustments once the 10 barrel's up, but I think the beers are going to stay pretty consistent. And we've wholesaled for 2 years, so it's made a good thing for us to start slower.
And when Eric says 10 barrel, we're upgrading from a smaller system to a 10 barrel brewing system, which for us is a big jump. And just back to the original question, that brewing process, really starts with the logistics and the recipe formulations, and then it becomes, a matter of being a brewer. So you'll mill your grain. Once your grain is milled, you'll take it to the mash. They go from the mash to the boil, and then from there, the fermentation. You pitch your yeast.
Right. Which I think we talked about a funny story. Would you mind sharing that story when you first started brewing about?
Yeah. So I might be 21. Let's just say for this, I'm 21, and my parents' friends across the street had received a home brew kit for his birthday, and he just decided this is too much work, it's too much trouble, I'm not going to use it, and he gave it to me as a gift. Just said, here, you can have it. I was super excited. Took it home. I made a batch of a beer that week. It was an ale, and everything went great. Put it in the carboy, put it in a closet for it to ferment, and after a few days there was just no activity in the fermentation process. So I just literally got my notes and went back and started reading through everything, and as I'm flipping through these pages, a pack of yeast falls out. So I had not pitched any yeast on my first brew. So I don't even know if it qualifies as a brew at that point.
I think it does. Practice makes perfect. As in, you clearly have had a lot of practice. So, all right, I know you said about 21. So, in an estimate, how long do you think you guys have been practicing the brewing process, learning how to brew through the recipes and building it from scratch?
Oh, Dwight's the original. He's been doing it for over
Yeah.
20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so I started homebrewing over 20 years ago, and then it was about 2011 that I upgraded my brewing system, renovated an old tractor shed on the family farm so we could do all grain brewing there. And suddenly everybody was excited about it, including Eric. And so we would brew 40-some weekends a year,
Oh my gosh.
10 gallons at a time, and never ran out of beer. But we never ran out of company either. There were lots of people that came by.
Yep.
And then that was I think the spark in Eric that carried it through. And he was the one who surprised me, saying he had filed for an LLC for Kernersville Brewing Company in 2014. And I said, okay, because we were still in the tractor shed at that point. And he said, I just didn't want to let that name slip away. I don't want somebody else to start a Kernersville Brewing Company.
Yeah, because it was bound to happen. I mean, you guys have the perfect name.
Right.
It fits right in.
Yeah.
And I like the abbreviation. KBC is a household abbreviation. Everyone knows what KBC is.
That was actually a friend of ours that came up with that. Actually, he's on the wall Benjamin. He's actually the one that at first, I have to give him the credit. He's the one that said, you should guys be Kernersville Brewing Company. KBC said it's great.
Yeah.
And we actually tried to get another name. Rick and I had searched early on too, and we were going to do Piedmont Brewing Company.
Right.
And of course that was already somebody that's never done a Piedmont Brewing, but they own the rights to the name.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that we fought back and forth. Well, not fought, but we talked back and forth. But, us being Kernersville Brewing Company, there's really not a whole lot of those out there. Everybody has their own name, like Wise Man or Fillin' Fish or their own brand. And, sometimes that may be we're pigeonholed into Kernersville because that's what it
But
is.
you know where to find us.
But you know where to find us.
Right.
And I tell you, that our patrons in Kernersville, not only from Oak Ridge, we have people come from everywhere, but the folks in Kernersville have been huge supporters of us. Huge.
And I mean, your name stretches all the way to High Point.
Yeah.
I was talking to people, actually last night we went to a midnight paddling session, and there was people that had heard of you guys. And not only had they heard of you guys, they've been here several times. So, I mean, you guys are expanding quickly.
Yeah, kind of along those same lines. When we first opened, those first few weeks that we were open full time to the public, I knew 99% of the people that came through the doors, as well as Dwight and Eric. They knew everybody in here. And now, that number is probably, I know 25% of the people that walk through the door personally prior to KBC opening.
Right.
So it has started to really spread, and we're getting a lot of different people from the surrounding areas coming in, not just people we knew prior to Kernersville Brewing.
So how have you guys managed to, because I looked at your following on Facebook, you've got like 5,000 likes and followers. How have you managed, is it marketing or?
So, one of the lucky things, whatever you want to call it, that happened to us is our path and Vinny's path crossed. And Vinny had a really good feel for that type of marketing, the social media. He's a little bit younger than us, and so he gets it a little bit better than we do. He grew up in the middle of it. And so he's done a great job with giving us a presence out there on the social media, when to do it, how to do it, and how to be as effective as possible. So he gets a ton of credit for that.
How long had he spent, had he ever managed a bar, marketed a bar?
So Vinny's background, he had been in bars, he had been in restaurants. Vinny is his postgraduate degree is in, I forget which business field it was
His
in.
master's is in business, I think.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So he's got a good.
So yeah, he has a good feel for it, and he was working for a company that went in and audited bars.
Okay.
When we crossed paths with one another. So prior to him coming on full time, that's what he was doing. He was going in the evenings or in the mornings when the bars were closed, and doing an audit on their alcohol, whether it be beer, liquor, wine, whatever.
Yep. I remember when I was in the bar scene, those people, oh my gosh, you dreaded them coming. So you had to make sure your juices were labeled, everything was dated, everything was ready. So that's awesome that you guys were able to find somebody with that much experience and talent. And now, with y'all's background and his, everything is starting to piece together.
It all, yeah, kind of really meshed, dovetailed together really well for us. And for Vinny, too, I feel like. Vinny, we consider him as much a part as us. I mean, really, there's four of us.
You look at the picture on the wall. There's four of us. We definitely feel that way.
Yeah.
Be a lot nicer if he had some skin in the game, but anyway,
He's put a lot of time.
he's put a lot of
Sure.
time here,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
can't say enough about him.
A lot of blood, sweat, and tears here. So how did you guys, come up with your capital to actually do this? Because I know real estate here on Main Street, it can't be, inexpensive. Plus, constructing a bar can be quite pricey. On top of that, a brewery. How did you manage to do that?
That was a multi-headed approach that we had. One of those was just our own personal money is in here. We're all heavily vested in this company. We all believe in this company, or I don't think the three of us would do it.
Right.
In addition to that, we started a thing called the Founders Club. And basically, the people who are Founders Club members provided us with some upfront cash. And in return for that, they got some merchandising. They also got their name up in the tap room on some wooden boards we had produced. And they also get their beer served in a Founders Club mug. Just a way to say, hey, thank you, we appreciate it. I believe we ended up with about 170 of those Founders members.
Wow.
So it gave us some real operating capital as we're trying to open up, as we're trying to make things happen.
How did you go about finding these individuals, or did they find you?
Again, that was another one of those things. We used social media. We had some rack cards made that we would pass out at local businesses that listed out, what the Founders Club was, who KBC was, what we wanted to be, and kind of where we wanted to go with it.
We probably should have done it after we opened, with as many people that
Yeah.
want to do it now.
Yeah, now people come in, they see the founders boards, and they're like, how do I get on that board?
Yeah.
And we're like, those boards are there now. It's too late.
And then we had Cornerstone.
And in addition to the Founders Club, there was another higher level of giving or vesting in our company. And those folks are called Cornerstones, spelled Korner. Originally, Kernersville is a very old community. It was founded by a gentleman named Corner, and I guess over the years it just morphed into Kerner and became Kernersville. But we called those members Cornerstone members, just to play on words there, spelled with the K, and they gave a little bit higher level. And one of the ways we recognized those folks was also a large board in the tap room with their name on it, and we also put their name or their company logo on our glassware.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So I'm looking at one right now that says Concrete Craft. So that's a unique way of building a kind of joint venture partnership.
Yeah, and you mentioned Concrete Craft. That gentleman there, one of the examples, his name is Jason Berry.
Okay.
He owns a concrete company here in Kernersville. He does excellent work. He's a super nice person, and he's the reason we have the floor that we have in this facility.
Wow. And this is like the blend of coloring in your floor, you don't see it anywhere else.
It's a toffee-colored floor. It's over top of the old concrete that we just spent days and weeks grinding up.
Oh my gosh. That's a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. I'm really happy with the outcome. But again, that's just another example of a Cornerstone member like Jason Berry and Concrete Craft making this happen for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of partnership, because we wanted this to be we did not want it to be a bar. We wanted it to be a community meeting place. And we got a lot of buy-in partnership with the community, with lots of individuals, businesses, that people just wanted to be a part of what was happening here.
Yeah, and the thing I like about this place is a lot of bars that are labeled as bars, they come off trashy, and you get that trashy bar vibe. This doesn't feel that way. It's like a high-end, almost like a coffee shop, but with a retail establishment, and then this kind of like cool vibe where you can have your meetings and you know, families are welcome. Like it just is really unique, something I haven't seen anywhere else, especially not in town.
Well, one thing you did mention, Megan, earlier is how much daylight is in here.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's so
we
bright.
put in large window. This was a very dismally lit place when we took ownership or started to lease it. And we put in these large windows, opened up the front and the back, because we wanted it to be a bright, airy place.
I think that's one of the most intelligent things you guys did was there's 2 garage doors, guys. There's one in the front and one in the back. And because they don't have a patio right outside, because they're actually on Main Street, it's hard to have a patio on Main Street, they have their own sort of indoor patio. So they don't have to worry if it rains. They've got a garage door and overlook. And it really opens the place up. It feels like you're outside but still enjoying the AC. It's nice.
Yeah, and Rick's wanted to put the windows in, and one of his ideas was we wanted to actually where we could open these windows, and that was one of the things that we found that since it was level with the sidewalk, some of these lower windows, these first 2. That the town wouldn't let us do it because of safety issues of people coming in and out.
To Eric's point originally, those were going to be all the way down to the floor. You could open them up, but our floor is literally, to Eric's point, is lower than the street level in a couple of places. So this is what we have.
It was a
I mean, we
safety
made
issue,
it work, and you know, there again, we got very fortunate. We had a lot of help with the windows.
And the windows were the very first thing that we did here. That was the very first thing we did, and it was
A very loud mess.
a very loud and challenging mess. These are the people on the cast can't see them, but they're fairly large windows. It was actually easier to put the windows in than it was to get all the other stuff out.
Yeah, to take the wall down.
They're easily, 6 feet tall? By maybe
5 by 7.
Yeah, but the block is 12 inches thick.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was actually it was a lot of work. It took a week to even get the windows sawed out.
And it
a
looks
whole
like,
week.
is that refinished barnwood that surrounds?
That's exactly what that is.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So all the wood you see underneath the bar and around that frames out the windows and stuff came from a family barn on the family farm that I dismantled, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. And I set that wood back, hoping that maybe someday I'd build a smaller barn out of it, but I call it legacy lumber that's in here. And I'm really pleased how it's turned out. And we had a family friend, Chad Davis, who's done a tremendous amount of work in here, a lot of great craftsmanship. We give him all the credit for how this place turned out on the woodworking side.
And he and Rick built the bar. The top of the bar is
Red oak.
Red oak, and you can tell the story of how Chad got that wood.
Yeah, so our bar surface is these wide 16 to 18-inch wide planks of red oak that Chad used to play in when he was a kid. For whatever reason, they had to cut that tree down, but he had an uncle who was smart enough to take it to the sawmill and slab it out. They held on to it for years. Chad had the intent later on to put it down in floors in a house. It never worked out, so when we were batting around what ideas to put for our bar surface, Chad says, I have something you may be interested in. So when we saw it, we fell in love with it. We said, that's exactly it. So we tried to keep it as natural, tried to keep it as much character in the wood as we could. So we didn't saw out the sawmill blade or sand out the sawmill blades. We left everything as close to the original state as possible. So when you come in, you see the bar top, it will have a coat of epoxy resin on it, but it's going to look just like it looked the day they took it through the sawmill.
Yeah, and the thing I like about your bar top is it's got color in it. You know, it's just that unique little, if you're not looking for it, you won't know it's there, but it's in certain spots, and it's beautiful. It really brings out that wood finish.
Yeah, so we went with some blue coloring where we had knots or splits or imperfections in the wood that would create a divot or a void. And to your point, I really feel like that blue just kind of brought out the other reds and different colors in the surface of the bar.
Yep, and I think it draws the eye to that. So that's one of those landmark features. When you come to this bar, that's the first thing that you really see. So you guys talked about earlier, we were talking about how you offer things on Groupon, you have promotional deals. What kind of avenues have you guys been able to utilize since your opening that have really helped other than like Groupon? How have you been able to keep up with these events and promotions?
So the number one thing for us is making sure everybody is on the same page. So when we're not on the same page, we kind of tend to have some hiccups. So we do have a calendar. It's a shared calendar between all of us, Vinny, Dwight, Eric, and myself. And so as events happen or get scheduled, we lay those into the calendar, and we try to meet as often as once a week. We don't always make it happen, but we do try to have a meeting where we just sit down and talk about KBC business.
Cool.
We'll cover, things like events, what's coming up, and we look out, whether it's a week or 18 weeks. Mm-hmm. We're looking down the road at what's coming, and we try to get all that on one page in a calendar so that we're aware of it. Mm-hmm. As far as like the Groupon events, things like that go, again, Vinny is a big proponent of that. It brings people in that might not necessarily know we're here or know who we are, but they know who Groupon is.
Yeah.
So they'll go to Groupon, and then that's how they find us.
Yeah, and it's a brilliant marketing campaign. I mean, even my wife uses it. I always forget, and she's always on that, looking for massages and all kinds of stuff. And when she actually came across it, she was like, KBC has one, and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize. And I think that's a great way of bringing in new people. I was very impressed by that. So you talked about your calendar. What are some other, productivity hacks or things that have made it easier to juggle your life outside of here and the bar itself?
So the three of us still have, I call them our grown-up jobs. We each still have our grown-up job. Eric is a financial planner. I'm a planning and materials manager for a textile company. And Dwight works for, I'm sorry, you're under contract now with who, Dwight?
Oh, no, Wake Forest University School of Medicine.
Oh,
But
wow.
I will retire on November 1st and stop juggling and
Can you
be a full-time
write that
brewer.
down on
Yeah,
your
we
sheet?
wanna hold him to that.
What was the date again?
November 1st.
November.
Okay.
You can write that down. November 1st, 2019. Dwight will retire.
That's right.
Okay, so
And become much more available. But what Rick's talking about, I think, is that we're really faced with trying to juggle two sets of responsibilities, having our full-time employment, the thing that got us where we are today financially, and then trying to operate this business.
Yeah.
Again, we can't mention Vinny D'Abbraccio enough, that he is the glue that makes the rest of this happen. And he was our first paid hire in January of this year. And it's literally taken the four of us, and we wouldn't have got it done without him.
Right. So, in this business, there's really two businesses. I feel like there's your tap room, tasting room business,
Yep.
and then there's your brewery side of the business.
Yep.
And so we've tried to not necessarily divide it, but assign responsibilities. Kind of who's going to be where. So there's a leader in those areas, and things can happen. So Vinny and I handle a lot more of the tap room responsibilities, whether it be, just scheduling, staffing, ordering beer, being here on a daily basis as a manager on duty, that type thing. Eric and Dwight handle a lot more of the brewery side of it,
The production side.
Yeah, the day-to-day brewing, the ordering of grains, the scheduling of what beer is going to be made when, that type thing. We do try to meet as a group again and discuss those and say, hey, this is moving well, this isn't moving well, this is what we need to put into the rotation. But it's a big elephant.
Right.
And the only way to eat it is one bite at a time. So you just got to get in there and do it.
And we've done a pretty good job so far of, Dwight and I have our opinions about the tasting room, and we'll offer those opinions, but we let Vinny and Rick do what basically they do. And it's the same at the brewery. We can't micromanage every aspect of it. So Rick and Vinny doesn't come over to the brewery and go, hey, you need to do this, this, or this. They may say, hey, this beer wasn't quite, what we had anticipated, or,
Or
I'm
we
just
want
using
to
that as an
get
example.
An IPA on tap next.
Yeah, we
can
want
do that
IPA,
next.
yeah, something like that. So we've tried, like Rick said, it's not separated, but we try to run each of them that way, and it
Yes.
seems to work.
Yeah, with us all having, full-time jobs in addition to the business, really that's our only way I feel like we could manage it is just, take different silos of responsibility and go from there.
And I think that's awesome, and especially that there's not one of you that's trying to do everything, that you're not involved in like everything at once, and you have to be just as good at this sphere as you have to be. You've taken your strong suits and you've stuck with those, and you work with the other people who have strong suits in these spheres. And I like that you come together and communicate. So if you're on the taproom side and you say, hey, well, look, we tapped this keg tonight and we're done. We don't have any more. So obviously it's something we need to keep going, either with a special or something like that. So that's awesome that you're communicating. So I guess work-life balance would come into play. Do any of you have kids, or?
We all have we all have families. We're all married. So my wife and I have been married 27 years. I have a son who just graduated college, and I have a daughter who is a rising sophomore. And I won't speak for Eric and Dwight, but certainly with the new business, hopefully as time progresses and the business grows, more time is available to spend with family.
Right.
But a new business that you're trying to grow is like having a child.
Yeah.
You have to spend a lot of time with it. You have to nurse it. You have to bring it along. So kind of to your question, it does take you away from your family. Fortunately, this is a family environment.
Yep.
We try to build it that way. We try to make it feel that way as much as possible. So our families can come to us, whether it's here or at the brewery. And certainly I know my parents are here. Eric's parents come here.
Right.
Our wives and children come here. Dwight's children and wife come here.
Mm-hmm.
So we do get to see them, maybe just not in the home setting as much as in the work setting.
Do you guys ever have to schedule like certain family days or anything like that, or do you ever just?
Some of us have more personal days than others. Let's just say
That's all
that.
we'll say about it.
That's all we're going to say about that. Some of us have more personal days than others.
We've got to go to HR and talk about that.
But that part of just to go to my daughter's in college. She's a rising senior, and Dwight's children. He can speak to that later. But we do have older children, so it does make it a little bit easier for us. We don't have younger kids that require us as much, to be hands-on. But it is a lot for us to do. But with that being said, again, there's 4 of us, and if Rick doesn't feel well, or he's sick, or whatever, he's off, and Dwight is on vacation, and at least there's Vinny and I, or vice versa, the same way. I mean, it's collectively having this many people, and we have a great bar staff too, and they actually, if we really needed some of those guys. Or girls as well. I mean, we could use them at the brewery just as easy as we could here. So.
Right.
And that's something that I forgot to mention on my behalf. Where's your brewery located?
It's at 1031 East Mountain Street in
Okay.
Kernersville. It's an old tobacco warehouse park that RJR built back in the 50s, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's about a mile and a half from the tap room. And that's where our 1-barrel and 10-barrel brewery are located.
And originally we were going to put it here, and between the health department and the town of Kernersville, it wasn't that they said no, it was just the logistics of how we would have had to do things. And to be honest with you, we would have never had the space. It all worked out better where we are now. And Rick and Dwight and I made a decision on whether we were going to keep the old brewery or sell it. And it worked out just to go ahead and keep it. So now we'll run 2 of those breweries over there.
Yeah.
So
we'll develop into definitely large 10-barrel batches of our flagship beers, and then our 1-barrel system will be a lot of one-of special releases, those kind of things.
Experimental beers.
Yeah.
I think I'm drinking one right now that's absolutely phenomenal. Can you tell us about the, you said pineapple cider?
That one's actually, I'm sorry, that one, Megan, is not ours. Our newest beer out, we didn't have one up today.
Okay.
But it's called Feeling Minnesota, and we're brewing that with a Kevik yeast. It's a Norwegian style yeast. It ferments at a lot higher temperature, and in the process of that fermentation, that yeast throws off a lot of pineapple flavor.
And that was the one I had last time.
Yes,
that
ma'am.
was, I could tell the difference between the two, but that one was, it's unlike anything I've ever tasted. It has just a kick of tang with some, you can taste the pineapple, but it's not overwhelming. It's
And we were hoping to have a new Norwegian IPA out today that we've not named yet. So those beers from brew to keg is 7 to 8 days.
Wow.
It's pretty fast.
Yeah.
That is quick.
And
That hot
so
fermentation's
is a little different. So
Yeah.
we're going to start going to doing some one-ofs and some different things.
That's
So
cool.
yeah.
Okay, so I'll just get you a couple more questions. What are some obstacles that you encountered along the way through this building process, and what valuable lessons did you learn from these?
Patience. It's a
don't
definite-
say when you're going to open.
Yeah.
I mean,
Don't ever put a date on anything we do.
That's right. Avoid predictions. That when we took occupancy, at least of the space that we're in January of last year, and our first hope is that we'll open by May, in time for the big Corners Day Folly that they have, is first Saturday in May. That certainly didn't happen. Well, maybe by the end of the summer. No, maybe by the end of October. It's got to happen before the end of the year.
Christmas. We're having a Christmas party here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So January 18th of this year, we finally got the doors open. And along the way, the scope of what has to be done
Yeah.
is unimaginable when you have basically a blank canvas space, but also means you've got to put a new finish on everything.
And we GC'd this whole job, so we didn't have a general contractor. So the four of us, basically, I think, other than the HVAC in this and the electrical, and part of the plumbing, we did 75% of all the work ourselves, or either our friends did. We had a lot of friends. Rick and I had two friends that just phenomenal that worked up here until 9 and 10 o'clock at night framing all this out for us.
Yeah, I mean, we were here and basically just were gophers at that point. Those guys just were unbelievable, and a big part of why this space got open.
It was phenomenal.
But we could have done some things differently. But I mean, we've tried to, add things as we've went. But as far as having to change anything that we've done, I mean, it was a lot of stuff, and it was us having to do so many different tasks. But as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't have changed anything we've done.
Well, and the fact that we did so much of it ourselves, we've got a real sense of ownership about, if we'd had 10 times as much money to open this place, it would open sooner, but we wouldn't have had our handprints on it near as much.
And I don't
as
think
it
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 would
would
have
not
looked
have
like
had this feel that it has.
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
It feels very organic, and I love that about it.
Like very homegrown, just like the town. So off of that, you guys have a failure, or apparent failure that maybe set you up for success later on, or a favorite failure?
I never like to fail. Certainly, there's lessons there, and the most obvious, is always perseverance. That we got a lot of setbacks in this process, whether it be from, something we wanted to add in here that the town said no, you can't do that, or North Carolina ABC board said that's not allowed. So you just learn to figure out a way around things you can't do. And so, for your listeners, the one thing I would say, if you want to do it and you believe in it, stick to that goal. Just find a way to get. You can get there. You may have to take a different route.
Yeah, just adapt.
A detour. Yeah, there's a lot of adaptation that has to happen.
That's awesome. And the last question I want to ask you guys have kids in college. So for our listeners who are college students about to head out to the real world, what is some real world advice that you can give them?
Work, show up early, put in extra effort, be willing to take on more responsibility. Those are huge things that you can't teach. Just go do it. You don't have to have a super high IQ. You don't have to have a lot of money, but you can put in the effort. You can want the responsibility. You can go out and just have the drive.
I love it. Yeah, that's so true, and so few people coming out into the world right now are understanding that, I found. So that's awesome. But with you guys, I appreciate your time today, and you've really, I think, given some nuggets of wisdom, some laughs, and some good times.
Megan, this was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
guys. And with that, we're signing off, guys. Catch us on the flip side.